I wonder if this is a bit more analogous to U.S. politics, just because, the Democratic Party here, which is supposed to be the left-wing party, have really been taken over by neoliberals, especially since Bill Clinton in the 1990s. And recently with Donald Trump, Republicans have been shifting a little bit more towards right-wing populism. Is it sort of the same dynamics in the UK, especially over Brexit? Because, intuitively you would think that the Conservative Party would be the one who would be championing the EU, and you might be seeing some opposition from Labour. But we saw the reverse seemingly. So would you say that it's an analogous situation where neoliberals have taken over the Labour Party?
Well, that's pretty perfectly expressed, given you're thousands of miles away. That's exactly what has happened. Labour was historically against the European Union, and the Conservatives were mad for it. It was the Conservatives that took us into the then common market and then deepened that into an ever more NAFTA plus type relationship. But this gave rise to a division in the ruling class between the globalist capitalist wing and the British localist, nationalist capitalist wing. If you like, patriotic capitalists versus globalized capitalists. And that opened the door for the referendum which we had in 2016. Now, Labour backed the EU, and most of the now leadership of the Conservative Party opposed it, and they won. And so we now have a lot of political cross-dressing, a tremendous amount of political cross-dressing. So the Conservatives are the ones questioning the theorem of perpetual imperialist war that Hillary Clinton and Tony Blair represented, and the Labour people who are defending Tony Blair, defending the so-called internationalism of the interventionist wars over the last few years. And so you get Corbyn coming along as a man who opposed all those wars, a man who opposed all that austerity, and he, briefly as it's turned out, ends up as the leader of the Labour Party. The Labour Party will now move back towards Tony Blair because they have drawn the conclusion that it was Jeremy Corbyn and his leftist profile which cost Labour the election. So no candidate as left-wing as Jeremy Corbyn, who, by the way, he's not that left-wing. We're not talking about Lenin here. We're talking about a kind of Quaker, peacenik kind of guy. But no candidate as left as him will ever again be a candidate for leadership of the Labour Party. All the people now running to be his successor are more or less Blairite. And so that has opened a big political space on the left in British politics, which, as you indicated at the beginning, is something I'm in the process of addressing.
So yes, could you speak about that a little bit? Because you recently founded the Workers' Party of Britain. This, of course, isn't the first party that you helped found. I believe that you also helped found the Respect Party in the previous decade. So could you just speak to, what the philosophy of the Workers' Party is?
Well, the Workers' Party is what it says on the tin. The Labour Party became, even under Corbyn, maybe even especially under Corbyn, basically a collection of liberals who imagine that liberal equals left, that liberal equals socialism. And it doesn't. As a matter of fact, many of the liberal infatuations are core to the reasons why the working class has fallen out of love with the Labour Party. The Labour Party has become a university-educated, metropolitan, really rather prosperous, liberal outfit. And that's allowed, if you'll forgive me this rather cumbersome phrase, this embourgeoisification of Labour and the proletarianization of the Conservatives, which is analogous to the Trump thing up to a point, has led to this political cross-dressing. So Labour is perceived as anti-national, more interested in globalization, more interested in the EU as the personification of globalization in our region of the world. Labour is unpatriotic. Labour is against the family, thinks that the family is only one of a number of ways that you can live your life, neither better nor worse than those. The infatuation with identity politics, where everything is done on racial quotas, sexual quotas, gender quotas, now even transgender quotas. That's the Labour Party. To many working class people in England and Wales, and also to some extent in Scotland, though the national question there skews these things. Well, none of these things have anything to do with socialism. None of these things have anything to do with what I would call an actual left. Socialism accentuates only one identity, class. What is your relationship to wealth and power, to the ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange? If, like 99% of us, you are entirely dependent on your wage and your salary to live, then you are of the working class. And we need unity of all those who depend on their labor to live. And if you begin to stratify, differentiate different identities, subsidiary identities, you turn parts of that working class against each other. That's a big difference in our analysis. We are for the people with blue collars, whether they have black faces or white faces, whether they're gay or straight, however they're identifying today, we stand for them as workers. I think it's got legs. We are a pro-Brexit Labour Party, a socialist party. We really mean it.
So I think that, there's a danger of Democrats, repeating the mistakes of the Labour Party insofar as they're ignoring what the working class was telling them with the election of Donald Trump, similar to how Labour ignored the signals from Brexit. Over the last 3 years, Democrats have really been obsessing over Russia. They've really been trying to apologize for Hillary Clinton's loss to a handpicked Pied Piper game show host by focusing on Russia. And I just was wondering, I know that this came up a little bit in the UK election with Corbyn and the NHS, the leaking of documents there. So could you speak a little bit about how this neo-McCarthyist, hysteria that's plaguing the U.S. currently, how that also may have played a role in this election earlier this month?
Well, the Russians are everywhere, if you believe the British media and political class. But this time there was another piece of cross-dressing. The British general election opened with Labour accusing the Conservatives of being in the pay of the Kremlin. I know it sounds ridiculous, try not to laugh, having spent 100 years being smeared as quasi-Bolshevik agents of the Kremlin. Now Labour was accusing the Conservatives of being in the pay of the Kremlin. And as you say, the election campaign ended more traditionally with the Conservatives accusing Labour of having come across documents which they don't deny were real by virtue of Kremlin hackers, or I don't know, I didn't pay too much attention to it. But the idea that in South Wales, in the north of England, anybody is waiting for a signal from Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin to decide their next political move is so absurd, so ridiculous. I suspect we'll hear little more of it. But the Russians are coming as a narrative. I suppose it's always been with us It has survived the collapse of communism. The Soviet Union is 30 years dead, but still, we're on the lookout for men with snow on their boots.